back, relax, and let's have a chapter chat. I'm your host, Jessica Foster, and we have author Kristy Woodson Harvey here with us today. Kristy, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so thrilled to be here.
And Kristy, you have a new release, Beach House Rules, and a fantastic summer book. Let's talk a little bit about that book.
Well, awesome. Thank you. So Beach House Rules is about a woman named Charlotte whose husband is actually accused of a white-collar crime. So she and her daughter Iris come home and they can't get in their house. Their assets are frozen. And a woman that they vaguely know invites them to come stay at her mommune, which, if you have not heard of one of these, is slang for a mom commune, and they are actually pretty popular, which is was sort of the inspiration for this book. But the women under this roof bond really quickly because they've all come from unusual circumstances, but they start to realize that there's something that bonds them that they were not aware of, and they begin to wonder whether their coming together was actually a coincidence, like it seems, or if maybe it was orchestrated by something outside of themselves.
It's such a fun topic. Where in the world did you come up with this?
So it was so weird because I had never heard of a mommune before. That wasn't something that was like a part of my vernacular. And I saw it on a morning show a couple of years ago. And then it was like all summer long, I kept seeing, I'd see an article about a mommune, and I would see, there'd be something on the radio about a mommune. And I actually got an idea in an unusual way. There was a woman on a call-in radio show that called in on a show I was listening to, where these women were talking about how they had moved in together, mostly for financial reasons, because they had both found themselves as single mothers unexpectedly. And they, it was working really well. They loved having the emotional support. They loved being a part of this kind of unconventional family. And a woman called in to just, berate them for this, unconventional lifestyle and this thing that they were doing to try to make their life work. And it's not funny, but it's a little funny because I say all the time that there's a 1-star reviewer everywhere. Like, someone is unhappy with you right now for whatever you're doing. And I just got this idea. I thought, what would people say in a really conservative, small Southern town about a mommune? And that was where the idea came from.
And it is funny to think of it that way.
Yeah.
And you do a lot of Southern fiction. Women's Southern fiction is the genre that you're classified into. But you said you have a lot of male readers as well.
I do, which is so crazy. So we have, a lot of data and a lot of information about who is actually out there reading my books. And I remember the first year that we really started pulling this, it was probably 8 or 9 years ago. And my readership was like maybe 30% male. And we were like, that can't be right. It's got to be like the accounts that people are registered to, or, but no, it has stayed pretty consistent over the last few years. And it's really fun. I do some male book clubs, and it's been great. And I think, it just goes to show, my stories do predominantly feature women, but I think they're stories that everyone can relate to about family and friendship and love and, the struggles that we all face in our lives and how we overcome them.
And that's what I like about your books, because it's not just about a love story between a man and a woman. You also feature friendships and the mother-daughter relationship.
I'm just so interested, I think, in relationships in general and how they form us and how they shape us. And I think kind of a common theme of all my books is I have these women who are in a situation like Charlotte and Beach House Rules, where there's really no great answer. Like, I think we're sort of raised to think that life is really black and white, and that we're always going to be like, well, this is the right thing and this is the wrong thing. And I think I really love to write about those gray areas in life and what we do when our back is up against a wall and maybe there isn't a great option. And then how do we move on from there, and how do we, move forward? And I love talking about reinvention too. I think that's, we're always reinventing ourselves. We're always kind of becoming the next best version of ourselves. And I love writing about that.
Yeah. And you can really see that in a lot of your characters. They reinvent themselves a lot, and in some beautiful ways.
Yeah. Well, I think it's true to life. I think, no matter who we are, if we just stay the same, eventually life is going to probably tell us that we can't. So I think like embracing that change and even trying to get ahead of it is always really fun to explore.
You've been a published author for 10 years. Tell me how that feels when you see your book in a store.
Oh my gosh. It's one of those things that never gets old. So Beach House Rules is my 12th novel, and there's just something about that moment where you see it kind of come into the world. It's like when you hold it there are all these firsts. It's like you hold it for the first time, and it's kind of like having a baby, I guess. But, the first time that you're like, wow, this is really something that happened, and it's really something that came to life. But I mean, even now, I think, I walked into a bookstore a couple of weeks ago, and, I hadn't called ahead. I didn't know, if they had my books, and I went in and they had, like just dozens of my books on all these different tables in the store. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm so flattered and honored, that they would have my books in their stores. And I get to keep writing because people keep reading, and booksellers keep saying, I think you would like this. And people like you recommend me to, your amazing readers and fan base. And it's just, I'm so honored. I really am, because it's, I know reading is like a very deeply personal choice. And I just hope that, people will spend a few hours with my books, and maybe it will make them smile or think about something from their own childhood, or make them feel a little bit better about things.
Well, I particularly enjoyed A Happier Life, which was actually your release last summer.
Yes, it was last summer. And I told you secretly off stage, I mean, I probably shouldn't say A Happier Life is my favorite book of mine, but I think it's the most personal book that I've ever written.
And let's talk a little bit about why it is so personal. I know a little bit of the background because I did a little research, but let our listeners know why it's so personal.
Yeah. So A Happier Life is about a woman who knows her grandparents passed away in kind of an unusual accident before she was born, but she doesn't know that her mother has never sold her childhood home in Beaufort, North Carolina, where I just so happen to live. And so she decides that she's going to go back to Beaufort, clean out this house, put it on the market, and close this chapter once and for all. But when she gets there, she starts to realize that maybe the stories that she's been told about her grandparents her whole life aren't completely true. And then in the other point of view, we get to hear from Rebecca St. James, who is Keaton's grandmother, who is Beaufort's finest hostess. And her story unfolds from 1935 until that fateful night in 1976, when we find out what exactly happened to Rebecca and Townsend St. James. And this was kind of inspired by a family story, because I had a great aunt and uncle that passed away well before I was born. But it sort of, their story became a part of like our family lore a little bit. And I always had questions about it. There were always things I didn't understand about it. And I think in some ways, this book was like the way that I came to terms with, what happened to them, or what could have happened to them, and how that all played out. But then also, it was the first time I ever wrote about Beaufort, where I live. It's a town. We've lived here for maybe 8 years full time. But I just fell in love with this town at first sight. I was 19 the first time I came here, and we drove over the bridge, and I was like, I'm going to live here one day. And it was a ridiculous thing to say, because I think even now in 2025, I think we maybe have a full-time population of like 4,000 people. So this is a very small, like pre-revolutionary, waterfront town. And it's very special. And so getting to kind of bring it to life in these pages was really such a joy for me.
And as far as the mystery in your own family, you talked about how writing this helped you resolve some of that.
Yes, it did. And like, I hate to say too much because I don't want to like give away the ending really. And I think what happened to them is true, but I think this was almost my way of like rewriting their ending, or maybe giving them a happier life.
Yes, I like that. That was a great title. And was that the original title, or did that evolve?
So that evolved. So the original title was Where the Sky Meets the Sea, which I still love that title. But titles are one of those tricky things that they go through the author, they go through the editor, they go to marketing. And we kept Where the Sky Meets the Sea a very long time through this process, and then ended up changing it to Last Summer on Sunset Lane. And very late in the process, I was like, you guys, I can't say this title. Like, every time I'm talking about this book that's about to come out, I cannot say Last Summer on Sunset Lane. I mean, I can say it, but it's just a mouthful. So we all sat down, we got on this huge Zoom, and we were like just going through the book. And I a happier life is a phrase that both Keaton and Bex say in their chapters, but they mean it in a wildly different way. And so I thought, well, it's a nice nod to both of them, and it has a lot of different meanings in this book.
And we are going to see this book come to life on the screen too.
Yes, I'm so excited about this. So A Happier Life is in production with Amazon MGM for a movie, which is so exciting, with this just brilliant team. And I've loved working a little more on the TV and film side of things these past couple of years, and I've learned so much about that arena. But I'm super excited about it. I don't have a ton of information. I don't know like a release date yet or anything, but we are working hard on it behind the scenes. So I'm very excited to start announcing little bits of information when I can.
And this is not the first time that you've worked on something like this.
Yeah, so I have a couple of fun things going on. So The Summer of Songbirds, my book from a couple years ago, is just sold to Hulu. So that's very exciting. So we've been working on that behind the scenes a little bit. And I have a series called the Peachtree Bluff series that I got sort of well into the production process with. We had written the pilot, and we're working on the second episode. And then that writer's strike, which needed to happened. And sort of a lot of projects went by the wayside during that time, which, again, in the scheme of things was very well worth losing a project in order to, make all those amazing changes happen. But I'm very excited because we are kind of back in action on that one and working really hard on it. And Peachtree Bluff series is kind of maybe like a reader's favorite for me. So I'm excited to be able to work on that in like a different way. And there's a lot of energy behind that project. So I'm very excited to kind of see it come to life in a different way. And it's, it's 4 books. So it's a different process of like really having this very deep and long relationship with all of these characters, and really getting to see them take on a new life is exciting.
And when you are working with television and film, do you have a lot of say in the script?
Well, so I do. So every project is slightly different. The Peachtree Bluff, I'm actually co-writing. So yes, I have a lot of say. But the others, I'm involved in, a substantial role in everything else that we're working on. So either, like a co-executive producer role or something like that. But I will say that I am not a person who is like, oh, well, let's do it like the book. I'm very aware that what makes great TV is not necessarily what makes a good novel. So I've been pretty upfront about, if things need to change, if we want to see things differently. And so far it's been pretty great, because I think all of the adaptations that we're working on are fairly true to the book. Now, of course, it's incredible to look at it through that different lens, because things have to be much more dramatized for TV. And I think it's in a way that we don't even realize as viewers. Like, if you really break down TV shows, you're like, wow, that was a lot of drama that just happened. And it felt kind of like a nice, even like a nice kind of calm show actually does have a lot of dramatic beats. So, there are things that will amp up a little bit or drag out a little bit or something like that. But for the most part, I think that readers who have found themselves kind of attached to the characters in these books will be happy about the way that the adaptations come out. I hope, fingers crossed.
I think so. I have high hopes for them and cannot wait until they come out. I love reading a book and then watching it on the screen, and it is nice to see some of the differences.
It is, and it is a different medium, and so and I think for me it's been neat too, just to see how different people interpret it. Like, I'm working with a team on Under the Southern Sky right now, which is another kind of real like book of my heart. And actually in that one, this was so interesting because the writer was like, what if we brought in this element? And it was something that had actually been in the first draft of the book that my editor had wanted to take out. And I was like, oh my goodness, I think we're psychic. Like, this is working really well. So it is. It's exciting to see someone else's interpretation. I mean, even just listening to an audio version of your own book is a wildly different experience than when you wrote it yourself. So there's something really neat about it.
Let's talk about one of your other books, The Wedding Veil.
Yes.
Yeah, and that one has a little bit of a historical fiction to it.
It does. So, I'm so glad you brought that up. The Wedding Veil has been having a little bit of a resurgence, which is so interesting to me. It's a again, like a favorite of mine. I really love that book. And it came together in sort of an unusual way. So like you mentioned, it is more historical fiction. There's a historical storyline and a contemporary storyline. But I visited Biltmore Estate a lot growing up. And then a few years ago, I went back as an adult, and I just remember walking around and thinking, how would you actually live here? And how would you, be the mistress of this house? How would you keep this up? And then I learned how young George Vanderbilt was when he died, which is something that I was unaware of, and how his wife Edith was left with America's largest home, but no real money to speak of. And his fortune had been left to his daughter Cornelia, but she didn't receive it for many years after his death. And I was just fascinated in how did she keep up this house? I mean, it wasn't like 2025 where she could run out and get a job. Women didn't really have a lot of options back then. So obviously I ended up kind of taking the plunge, but it was an ironic time to do so because I thought this was going to be a really hard sell for my publisher because it was a little bit of a different genre, but they were very in from the very beginning, which was nice. And so I was on book tour. I flew home on March 9th of 2020, and I bought my annual pass to Biltmore. And as you can probably imagine, I never used it because, of course, COVID hit. And I had planned on spending all this time, in Biltmore with these experts, and then in libraries, in stacks, pulling out newspapers. And of course, I couldn't do that. So I almost scrapped the project. But fortunately, I had some really great librarians that helped me do this very primary research and pull out these, thousands and thousands of articles and pieces of content from the late 1800s and early 1900s that I really needed to put this book together. And so I feel like it was a hard-won project for me. And so I'm proud of the way that it turned out.
And I love this one because I grew up going to the Biltmore as well.
It was about this real life wedding veil that had actually disappeared in real life. And I just thought, what a great basis for, a contemporary historical novel. It felt like kind of a gift that had been dropped down to me. So it was a very different thing, something that I think I will do more of. I have, and when you write something like that, and then you start to get feedback from readers about I wish you would write about this woman, or I wish you would write about this family, or I wish you would write about this house. I love houses. And so that's been great. So I have this little file of, future historical projects.
And as far as what's next for you, are you already working on your next book?
So I actually have 2 books coming in 2026, which is very exciting for me. It's going to be a busy, busy year. But one of them is actually a bit of it's not a sequel to Under the Southern Sky, but it's sort of a companion novel. So 2 of the secondary characters from that book are the main characters in this new novel, as well as a new character who comes onto the scene who is a NICU nurse, and her first day at her new job in what is supposed to be this really sleepy town and this tiny hospital that doesn't get much action. An abandoned baby is brought into the hospital. And so she forms this really close bond with this baby, and also the man who rescued her. And this one is a lot of fun. There's community musical theater in it, which sort of ends up healing them all, which is probably my favorite aspect. And then in fall of 2026, I have a 5th book coming in that Peachtree Bluff series, which was something that, I wasn't really sure if I was going to write another one, but truth be told, the last book in that series, the Christmas book, came out in 2021, I believe. And the minute I finished it, I was like, oh, I have another idea. And I actually started writing. So every time I write one, I'm like, this is really it. This is really the final one. But who knows? I'm not even going to say that anymore because I'm not really sure. I love Peachtree Bluff, and it's a quirky little town, and all of these women very much. So we'll see. Well,
and viewers or readers, they love it as well.
Yeah, and I think I'm always trying to think about, what do the readers want, and what are they interested in? And it has been astonishing to me. I feel like books are one of those things that there's so many that are coming out all the time, and there's a lot of new material. And so when people keep coming back to me over and over again, years later about something that really spoke to them or something that they really enjoyed, I really take notice of that. There is kind of a special family at the center of this story, and it's these 3 Grimm sisters and their mother, and there's a big family secret in the first book that kind of explodes their entire world. And the ripple effect kind of continues throughout the rest of the books. But they're feel good, and the town of Peachtree Bluff itself is a real escape. And it was actually inspired by Beaufort originally. So I say it was like the Beaufort of my weekends and vacations when I wasn't really sure, that we were ever going to live here. But it's kind of this dreamy version of my Beaufort where a happier life is maybe a little more realistic.
You really like to connect with your readers. You hosted a group to Beaufort.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I do it almost every year. In fact, I was talking to the president of, the new head of the Historical Society last night about this. I cannot take credit for this idea because it was not mine, because I thought it was so outlandish. But the former head of the Beaufort Historical Association and my publicist came up with the idea when the third book in the Peachtree Bluff series came out that we were going to have a Peachtree Bluff town takeover. And we have these amazing, like, old English double-decker buses. And so the idea was, okay, we'll do all these bus tours around town, and we'll have a luncheon, and we'll have a dinner, and we'll have a big cocktail party with a big tent. And I was like, y'all are crazy. No one is going to come to Beaufort to tour Peachtree Bluff. And darn if they didn't. So that was probably our biggest one. And then when Christmas in Peachtree Bluff came out, we did another huge town takeover like that. But we didn't plan to continue doing them. And then probably, I guess it was 3 years ago, they called me kind of last minute and said, hey, we're getting so many calls about if we're doing a Peachtree Bluff town takeover this year. And so every year during the Christmas candlelight tour, we've done, some Peachtree Bluff bus tours and maybe like a dinner or an event, something, which has just been, it's so fun. It really is. And it's so flattering that people feel really attached to Peachtree Bluff and they want to be a part of it. And so, of course, with this new book coming in 2026, we're kind of planning like a big Peachtree Bluff town takeover, which sounds funny to say since it's like 15 months away, but it's one of those things that it could take that long to plan because it is a big undertaking. But it's a lot of fun to share it in real life with people and to just see like the excitement when people get to see it come to life.
And I'm sure that it's something that they never imagined that they could experience when they're reading this book and they're like, okay, I can actually step into the book almost.
Yes, exactly. And I do think it is that experience. And we make, signs for all of the restaurants and places in town that, are featured in the books. And all of their names are very thinly veiled. So you could probably just figure it out yourself. If you're walking around town, it's, everything's like, we have a restaurant here called Beaufort Grocery, for example. It's Peachtree Grocery in the book. I wasn't trying to reinvent the wheel. I wanted people to have those like fun little nods to their town. And especially for locals, I wanted them to be like, oh, I know that, or I know him, or I know her. I think it's funner for people who, have grown up spending their summers here, or I think even if you've ever been here and you aren't in Beaufort or you haven't been for a long time, I still think you can kind of piece that all together. So it's very exciting for me. And I actually got to bring we had a group of media come to town and we got to take them on the Peachtree. It was actually sort of like a Peachtree Bluff / a Happier Life tour. And we did it on these big golf carts. So it was kind of fun as opposed to the normal, bus that we use. But they really enjoyed it. And because it was a smaller group, I got to kind of do it by water also, which was really neat. And I'm like, ooh, my brain was already turning. I'm like, how could we do the Peachtree Bluff tour by water? Like what boat could we use? Could we have a mic? Like, how could we make this work so that people can kind of see it by water? Because it's a very different experience to see the town, to ride down the waterfront on the water versus on foot. So it's a beautiful, beautiful place.
If someone is listening and they have a goal of being an author one day, what is your best piece of advice?
Okay, so I know this is going to sound really obvious, but I talk to writers a lot who, are looking to get published, wanting to get published. This is a big dream of theirs. And they very often will say to me, well, I've started several things, but I haven't finished. Or I have a lot of good ideas, but I get stuck and then I stop and I start something new. I really believe that there is something kind of psychological about like our egos, that they're protecting us because we know once we finish that book, we're going to have to do something with it. Someone's going to have to read it. Someone's going to have to decide if it's good or not. We're going to have to take that plunge and try to get published, all of those things. And so my biggest piece of advice is always, even if you're writing something that you don't think is your best work, even if you're writing something that you think, maybe I don't ultimately want this to be, the book that I put out in the world, there is something so incredible about finishing a book, about writing that beginning, middle, and end, about being able to say, I did it, I finished it, it's completed. And whether it's the book that you want to try to get published, or if it's just like an exercise in signaling to your brain, I can write a book, I can do this. I think there's something really, really important about that. And I know it sounds silly for me to say that. Like, of course, that's really obvious. You have to finish the book. But I'm telling you, there's like something universal about that experience of feeling like I have this great idea, but I don't want to finish. And I think for me, like, this is the boring advice, but it's the realistic. I put out, a book a year, sometimes two. And I think for me, it's just getting up every morning. I write about 2,000 words a day, and it's all about just consistency and discipline and coming to the page. And even on a day that you don't feel super inspired, like, lightning has struck you, or, heaven has come down to hand you these beautiful words, there's something about just that discipline of showing up day after day that I think is really important, especially if you want to, have a career as an author. It's not all about, the chill bumps moment of the beautiful idea. It's also about showing up to the page day after day.
It's kind of like exercise, consistency to see the results.
100%. Like, I don't want to go get on the Peloton, but, we do it, right?
Yeah.
That's probably, it is a very good comparison, but also I do really love to write. So writing feels very, very fun to me. And I think I'm very fortunate in that, because I do think there's some people who are writers and who know they are writers and are supposed to be writers, but the process is very painful for them. And I very much love coming to the page and watching the story develop and seeing how it's going to unfold. So it is a discipline for sure. And I do think it's similar. It's like you show up and you do it even on the days you don't feel inspired.
Is there anything that you think readers don't know about you that you want them to know?
Oh, something that they don't know about me. Oh my gosh. I feel like I'm so like all over social media that they probably know everything about me. Okay, I have a couple of things. All right, so before I became an author, my two biggest fears were flying and public speaking, which is not ideal if you want to be an author, because you're going to be public speaking. And if you're an author who is touring, like I tour a lot, you're going to be on a plane a lot, sometimes every day for weeks on end. And so I do think that that's maybe an important thing that I haven't really said that I hope people know about me. I actually thought of this. I was at an event last week and someone came up to me and he said, I can never do what you do because I'm so afraid of public speaking. And I was like, I was afraid of public speaking too. But there was something about, I wanted this more. I wanted it enough that I was able to face those fears. And it's amazing how after you do something consistently, you just can kind of move on from it and let it go a little bit. And so I think maybe I'm kind of proud of that, of being able to look back over 10 years and think, okay, I faced those fears and I did them. And I don't even really think about getting on a plane anymore. Especially, oh my gosh, for the research for this book, I had to get on a 1973 Beechcraft Bonanza. I remember my husband being like, do you think it's a good idea to fly in a plane older than you? Because I don't think that's a great idea.
Oh, wow.
But I felt like it was important for me to have that sort of authentic experience. So I'm like, wow, I really moved beyond, I used to be afraid of the 747. Now I'm hopping on a very old plane.
Yeah, you really did overcome that fear, and we're glad that you did because your books are amazing. We enjoy them. We've enjoyed this time with you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I know you have 2,000 words to write, though, today.
That's exactly right. Well, fortunately, I did about 900 of them before I got on with you today. So we're good. We're cruising. I'm like halfway through.
All right. Well, Kristy, we look forward to talking with you again.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And you'll want to check out all of her books. They are all unique and wonderful in their own way. Thanks for listening. You've been listening to Chapter Chat. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Happy reading!